What's the nastiest thing you've seen at a party? I got a lap dance from a meth-mouthed, obese, energy drink chugging chick on my 21st birthday. I turned in, and as I drifted off to sleep, crash she belly flopped onto and subsequently broke down through the slats of my IKEA bed. She was wasted, and she just rolled around on the disabled furniture repeating AHM gonna steamroll yak. A guy took a 2-liter bottle and cut it in half. Then he screwed the threaded end into his asshole. Another guy walked over and pissed in his butt. I was at my friend's place, with maybe 15 other people drinking, and at that time, the McRib was back. This one guy Rob had brought one with him and devoured it, probably in under 30 seconds. About 10 minutes later, he went wide-eyed and began to regurgitate it, in one piece, roughly the same size and shape as the original McRib he had just eaten, but reconstituted out of McRib pulp pasted together with Bush Light. It landed on his stomach and sat there for a second until someone went, "Hey, the McRib is back." I watched my best friend's dad put a $20 bill in his daughter's pants while she was pretending to strip. He encouraged her to take it off and watched as she made out with dudes. This is definitely not the response you were expecting, but one time, when I was 9 or so, my parents hired this reptile guy to host my birthday party. He brought this huge lizard and it projectile pooped all over our living room. Some guy was just walking around naked carrying a poodle. He was erect. One of my guy friends chugged 151 straight from the bottle for 10 seconds. He then proceeded to projectile vomit on everyone in a 3-foot radius exorcist style. I've seen a drunk friend lick whipped cream out of a stripper's asshole. Meth head stripper, not hot stripper. Later in the evening he attempted to shove a donut up his own asshole and then proceed to eat the remains of whatever fell out of his crack. This girl Jennifer came to the party and then pooped where people could see. Duck. It wasn't really nasty. Well, kinda funny. I don't know what to call it, but there was this one party that we threw. We always threw some wild-ass parties. Anyways, middle of the party I heard chanting duck that table from outside. I go outside to see what's up. This fat dude was so drunk he was ducking the wooden table. There was a little hole I believe and he was butt naked ducking the table. He was going wild too, slapping the table and everything. He then literally ejaculated on the wooden table and raised his hands up in triumph and everyone cheered. He stayed the night. Mind you, I never met this kid before, and in the morning we all gave him it. He had no recollection of ducking the table. Ducking parties, man. Freshman year of college, 2011. Guy ate a digested piece of poop corn from a toilet bowl for box of wine. We called him the Colonel, until he dropped out less than a month into the semester. You people seem alright. Your friends, however, are ducking disgusting. Had to pick the lock to the bathroom because this girl had not responded for some time. Coming in, we find her sleeping over the toilet, puke in the bowl. Her pants were down, but not the thong, and she had managed to it herself, splitting the it right down the middle. This one time this girl was dancing with this guy and left period blood on his leg. It was super bad. We were having a party at my apartment. Last day duck that place kind of party, and there were like 8 people out on our little balcony smoking cigarettes, and there was one chick holding her beer, and she seemed pretty ducked up, but pretty much everyone was. But she was standing right in the middle of the balcony, puts the beer in her hand up to her lips and proceeds to vomit. She thinks the bottle will catch the vomit, but instead it was like putting your thumb over the end of a hose and just sprinkled the entire ducking balcony. I mean, top to bottom everyone out there was just covered. A girl once emptied the contents of a pet egg that she'd found into a bowl of potato chips as if it were a seasoning, and then passed the bowl around. People ate them. My friend cheated at Monopoly. Can someone find the post where the guy threw up chunks of fruit in the punch bowl, and people ate the chunks all night? That's got to be one of the worst. Saw an overweight girl passed out on a chair in the kitchen. Her legs were spread and she had it herself. Her nickname from that point on was a burrito. Someone knitting in a kettle and then switching it on. Room cleared. My friend did a backflip on a trampoline while at a party and pissed drunk. Ended up clipping his chin on the metal part of the trampoline and opening it up. There was a bit of blood but not that much, however he definitely needed stitches in his chin. So a friend who is an army medic thought it'd be a good idea to stitch said friend's chin up with a sewing needle and some thread. He actually did a pretty neat job of it, as the friend who whacked his chin didn't want to leave the party. All was going well until a person who had arrived to the party after the incident thought the person had a piece of thread on his chin and decided to yank it off, not knowing we had stitched his chin. Damn. After reading these comments I realized two things. 1. My crazy party stories are not that crazy. 2. Hitting yourself when drunk is fairly common. I don't regret number 1 considering the number 2. Pun intended. In high school, I was at a party and there was a Chinese girl there who must have been about 4 feet 9. She was wasted. I remember standing next to her and looking at her and she had turned a color that I can't even describe. She then got down on all fours and threw up everywhere. The most horrid looking puke I'd ever seen. All over my shoes and the carpet. Everyone went dead silent. For some reason, I asked her, "What did you eat?" And she looked up at me from the floor, eyes bloodshot, puke dribbling down her face, and said, "Baha fresh," and then threw up all over again. Nasty? Wait till the end. At one of my first college parties, a very attractive girl walks up to me and whispers in my ear, "Do you wanna have a good time?" Of course. I said sure. She then proceeds to tackle me to the floor, pour an ungodly amount of what I believe to be mince knops down my throat, while 2 of her friends then pour whipped cream and Hershey syrup on top of it. It was kind of awesome. Cue freshman guy who was just about as awkward as me, walking in about an hour or so later. When he experiences this whole shenanigan, he pulls some sort of surprise projectile vomit action all over the girl, pouring the liquor into his mouth. This girl then proceeds to puke all over him, producing this weird, almost tantalizing if it weren't vomit, circle of vomit between the two. The stench of mint flavored vomit with a hint of halfway digested dairy cleared out that party in about 90 seconds. Should have been a goddamn fire drill. I'm imagining at least 2/3 of these people as jugglers. I saw a girl dip some chips and lick all of her fingers after eating the chip. She then proceeded to do the same thing again. She did this for most of the night. It was like watching a dog try to lick clean its puppies. I didn't get any more chips or dip for that night. Edit. Clarification. She was dipping her licked fingers in the chips and dip. Outside of the house where the party was being held, there was an unfortunate fellow barely conscious lying on the lawn. He was surrounded by a few guys who were laughing at him while throwing dirt on him, pouring their drinks on him, and then one guy pissed on his face. This girl looked like Snooki on meth. She was super unattractive. Anyways, while playing beer pong, all of a sudden she says, "But like I'm not gonna strip, okay?" Me and my bro just look at each other like, WTF is this girl talking about? We start telling her she doesn't have to strip and it's not strip pong, so it's cool. After we beat her in pong, the girl says, "Okay, I'll just take off my panties though." She was wearing a dress, a size too small because fat, and takes her panties off, getting them stuck on her heel. She folds them up and puts them in her purse. Then she sits on my couch and starts grinding on it. She eventually gets too drunk, so we kick her out. Another girl sits on the couch and asks who left chocolate because it's smeared. It wasn't chocolate. TLDR. A very unattractive lady took off her panties during a game of what she thought was strip beer pong. She grinded on my futon and left a skid mark. Had a New Year's Eve party in a hotel with a bunch of my friends. This was going into 2000, so we felt the need to party extra hard. We had a guy come in, take shots with every person there, pounded vodka out of the bottle. 10 minutes pass and he is in the bathroom puking and peeing on himself while people throw tortilla chips at him, telling him he needs something on his stomach to combat the vomiting. Only one person knew this guy, never saw him again, but Doug the Drunk's legend lives on in my circle of friends. It all happened in the span of 15 minutes. One guy shat into another guy's mouth. I don't know why. There wasn't a bet going. They weren't on anything. They just went ahead and did it. It was the night I learned the difference between those guys are ducking crazy. I'm gonna get them a drink and those guys are ducking crazy. Maybe we should get going. Piddle scoot. It started as just a normal high school party and turned into the most legendary night of all. There was this gross girl that was blacked out on rum and 4 Locos and was found in another room by herself, sitting butt-ass naked on a hardwood floor in a large-sized puddle of urine. Once everyone had gathered in there to see the spectacle, she tried to scoot towards the bathroom door, smearing pee and a few dingleberries across the wood floor. Once she made it into the bathroom, the door closed and a loud glass broke from inside. The kid whose parents owned the house went in and found her laying in another pile of pee, now mixed in with blood from the broken glass that mildly sliced her ankle, and the alcohol caught up to her stomach and she was now puking everywhere. The grossest part was dragging her downstairs and throwing her in the shower. It took like 5 people trading off in between holding your puke down from the stench. I fed her croutons in a drunken attempt to sober her up, and once she washed all the puke, pee, and blood out of her hair and regained a sense of reality, she was super embarrassed. Apparently she did the same thing again a few months later. Not really a party, but I saw 2 guys whip out their D's in the middle of the mosh and piss on each other at an Eminem concert a couple weeks ago. It was one of my first college parties and a guy on my floor made the mistake of talking to a football player's girlfriend while the guy was just a few feet away. He immediately came over and started screaming at the guy and shoving him. So he just ran off out of the party rather than getting his ass beat or thrown out, and assuming it was over everyone just goes back to partying until a few minutes later when he returns and taps the big linebacker on the shoulder, and as soon as he turns around slaps him right across the face. What we did not realize at first was that he had ran off and masturbated into his hand before coming back. No pun intended. The football player is pretty much stunned and stands there long enough for the guy to run off one final time. The surprise on that football player's cum smeared face still disgusts and amazes me. Any sort of porta potty at any music festival. The worst times are early in the morning, right before the sun comes up. I was actually relieved to open each one and only see a mountain of it overflowing above the top of the toilet seat, versus all of that mess and my worst nightmare, which was finding someone in their drug frenzy hanging out, or even worse, having sex in one of these horrific places. I just began waiting until 8 AM to use them immediately after the cleaning trucks came by, and I was always first in line. Was wandering around Isla Vista in Santa Barbara on Halloween my freshman year, going into the various house parties that were happening. We walked into one random house to check it out and it was pretty crowded. I noticed some space over near the kitchen and headed through the crowd. As soon as I turned the corner into the room, however, I was greeted by what I could only describe in the few seconds I saw it as a heavier set girl dressed as what I could only guess was some sort of healthcare worker, getting plowed up against the wall by a small ginger kid in a 300 costume with a pile of puke on the floor beneath them. Got the duck out of that party real quick. Raccoon who must have came into the window at a party drowned in the toilet. IDK, how else there could have been a dead one in there? Imagine that. Plus probably 12 freshman college girls vomit on top of that. The worst smell I have come into contact in my young life. The cleanup was unearthly. Refused to use that toilet for the rest of my residence at said abode. I was at a party in high school at a girl's house and no one there was showing the house any respect. Holes in the walls. Broken it. Stolen it. The works. Anyway, this one guy decides to take it on a cookie sheet, put it in the oven, and bake it at 350. Incredible. Never in my life have I seen or smelled anything quite like that. Watched a kid funnel a few beers out of a dirty traffic cone that had been brought out from the road. It was winter in upstate NY. That thing was caked in mud, salt, sand, who knows what else. Walked into a room at a house party in college. Witnessed this guy, who on my floor in the dorms, it on some girl's chest. My faux little sister's boyfriend at the time was doing gross things for money, and for something like $70 was willing to drink a big glass that everyone had pissed into, and snort a line of the combined chopped up pubes and a shares of most of the dudes at the party. I've also witnessed a drunk girl very methodically pull down her pants, grab the blender off the kitchen counter and put it up to her ass, take her directly into it, put it back on the counter, plug it in, and then turn it on, with no lid on it, in a room full of people, none of whom had noticed what she was doing until it was too late. I would have yelled to warn them, but I was sort of like a deer in headlights for the whole thing. My friend claims he walked in on 2 chicks on the toilet with one sitting in the other's lap. Both had their pants off and were peeing. Kind of tame compared to other stuff here, but still pretty weird. OHH man. Haha, where do I begin? We got my buddy so drunk he pissed it and threw up on himself. My man hit the trifecta of bodily fluid disposal. So, we are all winding down. Most of the people are leaving. And we are wondering where this kid went. After a brief moment of looking, someone comes running in the room laughing their ass off and says we need to come see this. So, about 10 of us follow and go into the bathroom, and that's when we see it. This dude, defying the entire laws of gravity and physics, somehow managed to projectile it all over the bathroom walls, floor, and sadly, his persons. He was sitting on the toilet seat, hunched over, completely out cold. His pants were around his ankles, and he was exposed for all the world to see. He was covered in it. Turns out he pissed himself, puked all over his D, while simultaneously somehow managing to it in an upwards trajectory and cover everything. It went as high as to hit his neck. How in the world he managed that, we will never know, but it happened. Some things cannot be seen. And yes, he never heard that end of it. Also, girls snorting coke off a dude's D, blowjobs in the bathroom with the door open, girls dancing with it all over their underwear clearly visible from the outside. Period blood. Lots of period blood. I could keep going but I will stop. Alcohol is a dangerous thing. Lol. Someone hid under the bath mat in the washroom and then stomped it down so each person coming in the bathroom would smell the horrendous smell of it and have no idea where it was coming from. Kid was totally at-faced and could hardly walk around. Was on the ground somehow just pulling beer after beer out of his pants. Someone handed him a beer full of piss, which he promptly chugged with no reservations. Not nasty, but weirdest. I was at a party at this lake, and this dude was ducking wasted. He was caressing some speakers as they were playing music, and then he proceeded to say my baby needs fuel and pours beer into the speaker. You can just hear the speakers break. Then he proceeds to shout "Oh, that wasn't my baby" and throws the speakers 10 meters away and then walks away as if nothing happened. One time I put a banana in the microwave at a house party hoping it would blow up. It made the whole party smell really nice like banana bread. My younger sister was having a house party when my parents went to Luxembourg for a long weekend away. I came back from my mate's house after a night of sniffing poppers and playing Minecraft, and was pretty shocked by what I saw when I came home. Well, downstairs was pretty tame, but I walked up into my sister's room to see if she was there to ask her what time she was going to wrap it up. But to my horror I walked in on her getting railed by her boyfriend and his best mate. I didn't realize it was her, but I did see her vag and arsehole before I ran in horror. Sometimes when I masturbate it creeps into my mind's eye and I have to stop. Undergrad party hosted by my friend's fraternity. Let's call him Mark. So at this party there were incoming freshmen to our university. Basically a bunch of 18-year-olds looking to get drunk at a frat party. Towards the middle of the night they have the music blasting and lights down. Add an Everclear punch and newcomers to drinking and you're going to have weird things happening. So my friend Mark has been dancing and grinding on a girl for a while, but I could tell something wasn't right. Mark looked a little too sweaty and uncomfortable. I turn away to talk to some other people when I hear a scream hidden by the blasting music. I turn back and see a girl speaking with a security guard and waving around frantically. As I looked closer I saw what was wrong. On her back was a glistening streak of jizz that went from her shirt to her back and then her pants. Apparently all the dancing was too much for my buddy Mark and he unloaded on this poor girl's back. The security guards then proceeded to look for Mark for about 20 minutes based on description only. They eventually found Mark but he denied their accusations, finished his drink, and left the party like nothing ever happened. TLDR. It was a comeback story. This past weekend, I saw a girl I know sitting on a couch wearing a dress. She pulled a spray can out of her purse, spread her legs, and sprayed her V with deodorant. She then looked at me and told me not to judge her because sometimes they just get stinky. I saw someone eat diarrhea into an open beer can then give it to another person to drink. Maliciously. They almost drank it. 2. They gave it a sniff and squeezed the can a little. causing gross brown beer and it foam to peek out the mouth hole for a second. Somebody stepped in at this point to prevent the highly intoxicated individual from unknowingly drinking fesses. I still can't believe the aim required to get it in there. In Australia we have a thing called Outback Drunk. It's like a mythical level of drunkenness where you get so ducked up you wake up with a 3-day-old turd in your pants. Well, I've woken up with one. I just wasn't sure if it was mine or not. I was at a party back in high school, at a friend of a friend's, who had a drug dealer for an older brother. There were some people pretty ducked up. Anyways, I was gonna hook up with this girl, and I hear a noise in the closet. I open it up, and find this 450 pounds naked man, obviously tripping his balls off, pupils beyond dilated, with a giant stuffed snake wrapped around his neck like a scarf, staring me dead in the eyes while licking a giant lollipop. I didn't get laid, and I'm pretty good friends with the dude now. Not nasty, I know, but craziest party experience I've ever had. First caught this obese girl atting in my frat house's bathtub, then finding her passed out in her own bodily fluid substances. New Brunswick, NJ circa 2008. I was a high school kid hanging out with some friends. We went to some bro party. The attic was dedicated to beer pong. One bro kept winning. I was spectating, people watching, realizing I don't ever want to go college when the beer pong champs runs over to the window to vomit out of. He opened the windows and begins projectiling. A few moments later I hear people screaming. He puked on all the cigarette smokers outside but never pushed up the window screen. Liquid vomit on smokers. Chunky vomit all over his face. The smell filled the attic. About 4 other people puked. Needless to say, I love college.